There's a deal being negotiated right now that nobody in Ottawa wants you to know about. A deal that would make Alberta one of the richest places in North America overnight. A deal that would give Albertans access to the largest economy on earth with zero barriers. A deal that would end the equalization nightmare permanently. And it's not hypothetical. The offer is real. The conversations are happening, and the Americans are very, very interested. Let me show you exactly what's on the table. What Alberta would gain, what it would lose, and why Ottawa is terrified this conversation is even happening. Because once you see the math, you'll understand why this isn't a fantasy. It's a calculation. And for a growing number of Albertans, the numbers are starting to make sense. Let's start with what America actually wants. The United States imports approximately 6.5 million barrels of crude oil every single day. Despite being the world's largest oil producer, America still needs foreign oil to meet demand. And for decades, the majority of those imports have come from one place, Canada, specifically Alberta. 60% of all American oil imports come from Canada. That's over 4 million barrels per day flowing south across the border. More than America imports from Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Venezuela, and Mexico combined. Alberta isn't just a supplier. Alberta is the supplier. And right now, with the Strait of Hormuz disrupted and Middle Eastern oil uncertain, America is looking at its energy security with fresh eyes. They're asking a simple question. How do we guarantee this supply forever? The answer is sitting right above them. 4 million barrels a day. Friendly, stable, connected by pipeline. The only problem? That supply is controlled by Ottawa, a government that has spent the last decade blocking pipelines, imposing carbon taxes, and talking about phasing out oil entirely. America watches Ottawa cancel Northern Gateway. They watch Ottawa kill Energy East. They watch Ottawa delay Trans Mountain for years. And they start to wonder, is Canada a reliable partner? Or is Canada going to let its ideology interrupt our energy security? From Washington's perspective, the solution is obvious. Don't deal with Ottawa at all. Deal directly with Alberta. And that brings us to the offer. In January, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent called Alberta a, quote, natural partner for the United States. He said Albertans are very independent people, and that there are rumors of a referendum. Days later, Alberta separatist leaders announced they would request a $500 billion line of credit from the U.S. Treasury to fund independence. $500 billion, not million, billion. And the Americans took the meeting. $500 billion, not million, billion. That number wasn't an accident. That was a signal. The Americans are saying, we will fund your independence. We will guarantee your loans. We will open our markets completely. All you have to do is leave. But let's be specific about what Alberta would actually get. First, market access. Right now, Alberta sells oil at a discount. It's called the Western Canadian Select Discount, and it costs Alberta billions every year. Why? Because Alberta is landlocked within Canada. The only major export routes go south to American refineries or west through Trans Mountain to the Pacific. That's it. 2 options. And when you only have 2 buyers, you don't set the price. They do. If Alberta joined the United States, that changes immediately. Alberta would have duty-free access to every refinery in America. Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, California. No tariffs, no restrictions, no discount. The Western Canadian Select spread would disappear. Alberta oil would sell at world prices. That alone is worth $10 to $15 billion per year. Second, investment. American capital has been hesitant to pour into Alberta because of Ottawa's regulatory uncertainty. Carbon taxes change, environmental rules shift, pipeline approvals get revoked. It's chaos. But American states don't have that problem. Texas doesn't wake up wondering if Washington will cancel its oil industry. Neither would Alberta. The moment Alberta becomes American territory, the investment floodgates open. We're talking hundreds of billions in infrastructure, refining capacity, petrochemical facilities, and LNG terminals. Bessent's $500 billion number isn't charity. It's a down payment on a century of development. Third, taxes. Albertans already pay some of the lowest taxes in Canada. No provincial sales tax, relatively low income taxes. But they still send $32 billion a year to Ottawa through federal taxes. Money that gets redistributed to Quebec, Ontario, and the Maritimes. If Alberta joined America, that $32 billion stays home. Yes, Albertans would pay American federal taxes instead. But here's the difference. American states get value for their federal taxes. Military protection, interstate highways, federal programs that actually benefit them. Albertans pay $32 billion to Ottawa. And get what exactly? Blocked pipelines, carbon taxes, lectures about climate change from politicians who fly private jets. The trade isn't even close. Fourth, military protection. An independent Alberta would need to build a military from scratch. That's expensive, complicated, and it takes decades to develop real capability. But in Alberta inside America, instant protection, the most powerful military in human history, nuclear deterrent, NATO membership through the back door. No one invades American territory. No one even thinks about it. For a resource-rich region surrounded by increasing global instability, that security guarantee is worth more than money. Fifth, mobility. 330 million people, the largest consumer economy in the world, and Albertans would have full access. Want to work in Texas? Move. Want to start a business in California? Go ahead. Want to retire in Florida? You're right as an American citizen. Right now, Albertans are stuck in a country of 40 million people, half of whom live in Ontario and Quebec and vote for policies that hurt the West. In America, Albertans would be part of a continental powerhouse with unlimited opportunity. The math is overwhelming. Market access, investment, lower effective taxes, military security, economic mobility. But there's a catch, actually several catches. And this is where it gets complicated. First, sovereignty. If Alberta joins America, Alberta isn't independent. It's a state. That means federal laws apply, American federal laws. Gun regulations might be different than Albertans expect. Healthcare would shift to the American model. Abortion policy, drug policy, immigration policy, all set by Washington, not Edmonton. Alberta would trade Ottawa's control for Washington's control. Some Albertans would see that as an upgrade, others wouldn't. Second, the Canadian dollar. Every Albertan has savings, pensions, and assets denominated in Canadian dollars. If Alberta joins America, those convert to American dollars. The exchange rate at the moment of conversion determines whether Albertans get richer or poorer overnight. If the Canadian dollar crashes, which it likely would after Alberta leaves, Albertans holding Canadian assets lose value. This is a real risk that has to be negotiated carefully. Third, the border. Right now, goods flow freely between Alberta and the rest of Canada. If Alberta becomes American, that's a new international border. Trade with British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and Ontario becomes foreign trade, subject to tariffs and regulations. Saskatchewan is likely to follow Alberta out, but BC, Ontario, those relationships get complicated fast. Alberta has existing treaty obligations with First Nations. Those treaties are with the Crown, the Canadian federal government. If Alberta leaves Canada, what happens to those treaties? Do they transfer? Do they need to be renegotiated? Who has jurisdiction? This isn't just a legal question. It's a moral one, and it doesn't have easy answers. Fifth, negotiations. Ottawa isn't going to let Alberta walk away without a fight. There will be lawsuits, political pressure, economic threats. And if Alberta tries to join America, the pressure multiplies. Canada isn't going to let a quarter of its landmass and 20% of its GDP just switch countries. The separation would be contested, bitter, and expensive. So that's the deal. On one side, unlimited market access, $500 billion in investment, lower taxes, military security, and economic integration with the most powerful country on earth. On the other side, loss of full sovereignty, currency risk, new borders with former Canadian partners, Indigenous treaty complications, and a brutal fight with Ottawa. It's not a simple choice. Anyone who tells you it is, either direction, isn't being honest. But here's what changed. 5 years ago, this conversation was hypothetical, fantasy, something people talked about in bars but never seriously considered. Today, it's different. Today, Ottawa is run by a government that has openly declared war on Alberta's economy. Carbon taxes climbing every year, production caps proposed, net zero mandates that would shut down the oil sands entirely. Today, the United States has a president who has explicitly said he wants Alberta's resources and is willing to pay for them. Today, there's a referendum on independence scheduled for October. And if Albertans vote yes, the American option becomes very real very fast. The question isn't whether America wants Alberta. America absolutely wants Alberta. They've made that clear. The question is whether Alberta wants America. And that's what we're going to break down next, the 3 paths forward. Independence as a sovereign nation, integration with the United States, or staying in Canada under new terms. Each path has a price, each path has a payoff, and only Albertans get to decide which deal they take. So what are Alberta's actual options? There are 3 paths forward. Each one has a price, each one has a payoff, and Albertans need to understand all 3 before October. Path 1, stay in Canada. This is the default, the path of least resistance. Alberta remains a province, keeps sending money to Ottawa, and hopes things get better. But let's be honest about what staying actually means in 2026. It means Mark Carney as Prime Minister, a man who spent years at the United Nations pushing climate action, a man who called for net zero emissions by 2050, a man who has never once defended Alberta's oil industry on the world stage. It means continued equalization payments, $32 billion a year flowing out of Alberta to provinces that actively oppose pipelines. Quebec takes the money and blocks energy east. Ontario takes the money and lectures Alberta about carbon. It means production caps. The Liberals have floated caps on oil sands emissions that would effectively freeze Alberta's growth. No new projects, no expansion. A slow squeeze until the industry dies. It means carbon taxes climbing every single year. $45 a ton in 2017, $80 now, $170 by 2030 if the current trajectory holds. And it means watching the rest of the world develop their resources, while Alberta sits on $4 trillion worth of oil that Ottawa won't let them fully access. That's what staying looks like, not stability. Slow decline managed by people who think your industry is a problem to be solved. Path 2, full independence. Alberta becomes a sovereign nation, the Republic of Alberta. Complete control over resources, taxes, trade, and immigration. This is what the referendum in October is actually about. Not joining America, independence. The math is compelling. An independent Alberta would have a GDP of approximately $400 billion. That would make it the fourth largest economy in North America, behind only the United States, Mexico, and what remains of Canada. Per capita, Alberta would immediately become one of the richest nations on Earth. Higher than Norway, higher than Switzerland, higher than the United Arab Emirates. Alberta would control 100% of its resource revenue. No more equalization, no more transfers. Every dollar stays home. Alberta could negotiate its own trade deals. Direct agreements with the United States, Asia, and Europe without Ottawa, filtering everything through federal priorities. Alberta could set its own immigration policy, bring in workers the economy actually needs. Alberta could eliminate federal regulations that strangle development. No more Impact Assessment Act. No more tanker bans. No more Ottawa blocking pipelines, or limiting production, or strangling growth with environmental reviews designed to kill projects. Bureaucrats deciding what Alberta can build. The upside is enormous, but so are the challenges. An independent Alberta would need to build institutions from scratch. A central bank, a military, a foreign service, courts, agencies, regulatory bodies. All of it takes time, money, and expertise. Alberta would need to negotiate access to ports. The Trans Mountain Pipeline runs through British Columbia. If BC decides to play hardball, Alberta's Pacific access gets complicated fast. Alberta would inherit a share of Canada's national debt, roughly 12% based on population. That's somewhere between $150 and $200 billion, depending on how negotiations go. Alberta would need to establish its own currency or adopt someone else's. A new Alberta dollar would be vulnerable to speculation. Adopting the US dollar means giving up monetary policy entirely. And Alberta would face pressure from Ottawa, unlike anything seen since Quebec's referendums. Legal challenges, economic threats, diplomatic isolation. Canada will not let a quarter of its landmass walk away without a fight. Independence is possible, but it's not easy. Anyone who tells you it's simple is selling something. Path 3, join America. This is the option nobody was talking about 5 years ago. Now it's being discussed in Washington. If Alberta voted for independence and then negotiated entry into the United States, it would become the 51st state. All the benefits of American citizenship, all the obligations too. The economic integration would be immediate and total. No more Western Canadian select discount. Alberta oil would have unrestricted access to every refinery in America at world prices. That's worth billions per year. No more pipeline politics. The Keystone XL that Biden killed? Irrelevant. Alberta would be inside the American system, shipping wherever the market demands. No more trade uncertainty, no tariffs, no restrictions. Full access to 330 million consumers and the largest economy on Earth. American investment would flood in, Texas-style development, Permian Basin money looking for the next opportunity. Hundreds of billions in infrastructure, refining, and petrochemicals. And Alberta would get something independence alone can't provide. Security. The United States military is the most powerful force in human history. No one invades American territory. No one threatens American states. The protection extends automatically to every square mile of U.S. soil. For a resource-rich region in an increasingly unstable world, that guarantee has real value. But joining America means giving up sovereignty and federal law applies. Washington makes decisions about health care, immigration, gun policy, and 100 other issues that would currently be Alberta's alone. Albertans would vote in American elections. 2 senators, maybe 5 or 6 representatives based on population. Real influence, but as one voice among 50 states, not as a sovereign nation setting its own course. The cultural shift would be significant. Alberta has a distinct identity. Western Canadian, prairie, independent-minded, but still Canadian in ways that are hard to articulate until they're gone. And there's no guarantee America would even accept Alberta. Admitting a new state requires an act of Congress. That means approval from the House and Senate. It means navigating American politics, where adding 2 senators from an oil-rich conservative region would shift the balance of power. Democrats would likely oppose admission. They'd see Alberta as a permanent Republican advantage. 2 more red senators, 5 more red electoral votes. The politics are brutal. Republicans would likely support it, but likely isn't certain. And the process would take years even under the best circumstances. So where does that leave Alberta? 3 paths, 3 sets of trade-offs. Stay in Canada, keep the stability, accept the decline, watch your industry slowly strangled while sending billions to people who despise you. Full independence, maximum sovereignty, maximum risk. Build everything from scratch. Face Ottawa's fury. Control your own destiny entirely. Join America, maximum prosperity, minimum sovereignty. Get the economic benefits immediately, give up the Canadian identity permanently. There's no perfect answer. Each path requires sacrifice, each path has genuine advantages. But here's what changed the calculation. 5 years ago, staying in Canada was the safe choice. Maybe Ottawa would come around. Maybe the politics would shift. Maybe equalization would get reformed. None of that happened. Instead, Ottawa doubled down. Carbon taxes went up. Pipeline approvals went down. The message from the federal government has been consistent. Your industry is a problem, and we're going to manage its decline whether you like it or not. 5 years ago, joining America was a fantasy, something people joked about after a few beers. Nobody in Washington was taking meetings with Alberta separatists. Now they are. The Treasury Secretary is calling Alberta a natural partner. State Department officials are meeting with independence leaders. The separatists are requesting a $500 billion credit line, and the Americans are listening. 5 years ago, independence seemed impossible. The legal barriers too high. The economic challenges too severe, the political will too weak. Now there's a referendum scheduled for October. The signatures are being collected. The polling shows movement. And for the first time in Alberta's history, leaving Canada is a real option that real people are seriously considering. The ground has shifted. The old assumptions don't hold anymore. Ottawa thinks Alberta will never actually leave. They think the threats are bluster. They think when push comes to shove, Albertans will vote to stay because they always have. Maybe they're right. Or maybe they're making the same mistake the British made with the American colonies. The same mistake London made with Brexit. The same mistake every empire makes when it assumes the provinces will accept decline forever. Alberta has options now. Real options. Options that didn't exist 5 years ago and might not exist 5 years from now. The Americans are interested. The referendum is coming. The math is on the table. What Albertans do with that information is up to them. But one thing is certain. The conversation has changed. The deal is being discussed. And Ottawa is terrified that Albertans might actually do the math and realize they don't need Canada nearly as much as Canada needs them. America wants Alberta. The question is whether Alberta wants America or independence, or whether it's willing to accept another generation of managed decline. October is coming. And for the first time in history, Alberta gets to choose.